Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you want to learn how to make really cute cat ears to put on clips for yourself, your kids, or to sell, stay tuned because I'm covering it from soup to nuts. So this is an embroidery project. We're going to be doing part of the work in here and then part of the work down in my workshop that's just under my feet. That's where my Ricoma MT-1501 is located. So I'll be doing all of the embroidery downstairs. This is going to teach you some really cool skills. 1, working with vinyl. 2, working with mighty hoops. And 3, learning how to do designs that kind of have multi-steps where you have to remove the hoop from the machine, do some fun stuff, and then put the hoop back and hope everything turns out all right. But before we head downstairs to the workshop and actually start stitching out everything, let me walk you through the free file that I'm providing for this project. Let's walk through the anatomy of this particular embroidery file. So this design is going to have a fill area for each ear. It's going to have placement guides with just single line stitches. And then there's the final stitch that's going to be in your border color that is going to be a triple run. This is what's going to glue the top and the bottom sides of the vinyl together. Now the thing is, you need to insert a stop in your machine, which I will show later when we get downstairs into the workshop, but you'll insert a stop before you stitch this final step to basically glue baste the back side of the vinyl to the hoop. And then it just stitches them together and seals everything together so that you don't see any of the stabilizer poking out. Now these guidelines, the placement guides, if I go and I hide one of these, you can see that it basically makes this little border. So you're like, well, why are you stitching this 2 times? Well, 1, this little rectangle here is going to be the guide for the portion that's going to wrap around the clip, because you're going to glue to the top of the clip and then take these extra little flaps and you're going to put them underneath the clip to hold it in place. That'll stop this from possibly falling off like a Sam and Libby bow on ballet slippers from the 90s. I'm not bitter. And it'll keep them from tipping forward or tipping backward. Now this larger duplicate of what will be the final stitch is only going to be on the top side, and then you'll see it on the underside with the stabilizer. That's going to be your guideline so that you know where to put the vinyl. So on the underside, you'll see this green line and you'll see this green line, and you can then determine how much vinyl you need to put on there if you need a huge piece, or maybe you can just get away with a little piece. It's very much like applique. So in the scheme of things, you really only need to have 2 colors. You need the pink for the inner ear, and you need black for both the placeholder and for the final stitch. Awesome. Now that we understand the file, let's head to the workshop. Now that we're in the workshop, we can use the embroidery machine to make the cat ears that will go onto the hair clips. Now I'm all set up to get everything ready. I have a hoop. This is my 5x5 mighty hoop. It's a magnetic hoop. And I have the vinyl that my children selected. I did not select. And then I have cutaway stabilizer. You want to use cutaway because if you use tearaway, then it's probably going to rip itself away from the hoop while you're trying to stitch everything on, since you have to do a few different layers of stitching to figure out where to place everything as a guide. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the top half of my mighty hoop and just use the bottom portion. This would be equivalent to you using the outer ring of a traditional hoop, and that's how we're going to put our stabilizer on. We're going to roll out what we need for our stabilizer. I'm going to be a little generous on the margins here because I'm actually going to use a helpful little tool to help guide and put the stabilizer down and hold it in place while I'm hooping. This is really important when you're starting to do things like garments. It helps a lot because otherwise things can shift between placing the stabilizer and having the top half put on. So we're just going to use that, but I'm going to cut 2 pieces of cutaway stabilizer. And the reason that I'm using 2 pieces of cutaway stabilizer is because I need these to be supported and I need them to stand up. So if I don't use a lot of stabilizer for this, then it's going to, the little ears, especially if you were to size up for larger headbands, they would just flop, they wouldn't stand. So I'm gonna take the bottom part of my mighty hoop, I'm gonna lay my stabilizer on top. I'm just gonna put one hand on it like this, and then confirm the bottom, which is the smaller portion. And then we're going to just place this over, and it doesn't have to be perfect, like it doesn't have to be tight like a drum. It just needs to be in place so that it holds it while you hoop the larger portion, and that like magnetize it. Like magnets, how do they work? It's science. Okay, so we have that. Now I'm going to grab the upper half. And again, these are very strong magnets, so I tend to just like hold the edge. Don't hold down here. That's how you end up never playing violin again. We're gonna hold on the side, or you can do like this, just anything other than this. And wham, slam it in there. And now it's as tight as a drum. Now before you do anything else, that little stabilizer assistance tool thingy needs to come off. So it even has a warning along the top of it to tell you to remove it. So you're gonna flip over the mighty hoop and you're just gonna pull it over very gently and take it off of there. And so now it's not gonna obstruct this as it moves in the machine, because that actually would add just enough of extra size to it that it won't work correctly. So now you're wondering, okay, well, what do we do with the vinyl? You didn't hoop the vinyl, kittens. What the heck-a-doodle? Well, I'm about to show you that and show you what I do. And remember that we're using 2 layers of stabilizer in here, and vinyl is fairly thick. Even if you get like a more canvas style vinyl, it's gonna be a little thick, and as much as I love hoops and hooping in general, it might not work to our advantage. So what we're gonna do is something called floating. Now to clarify, there's nothing wrong with hooping your vinyl if that's what you want to do. I just think that it is a lot easier if you just spray base down what it is that you need on the interior here, and then you don't waste any of the vinyl, and you don't need to have like a wrestler's license to get it into the hoop. Now, in order to float, you're going to need some kind of basting spray or glue sticks. If you just want to use a glue stick and wipe that down, that works as well. Basting spray is typically what I will use, but I will warn you, it does kind of make a mess, and it can lead to your hoops being sticky. So I tend to spray the product, the vinyl, and then put it down instead of spraying the hoop. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut out pretty much exactly what we're going to need for this little section here. And since I am erring on the side of caution, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out a much larger area than is needed. Grr, please work. This is my older rotary. I didn't bring my good ones down here, unfortunately. So I'm going to grab my scissors and I'll just cut. See, always keep the errors in the recording, because it's funny when people realize that you make mistakes. There we go. Okay, so now we've cut that. I need a trash can, but whee, that looks good too. Hang my scissors back up. Always continue to clean your space, because it makes it easier to find things later. Now I'm gonna spray the back of this, and so I don't get any of this sticky, I'm gonna turn and spray it over here so I ruin my husband's camping backpacks. Because camping backpacks in my workshop. Anywho, so we're gonna spray that down. Good measure. And you can see how all that residue is on there, and now I've kept it from being on my, my hoop, so that's kind of important. I'm gonna just turn this and press it down inside. And you wanna press up to the edges. just like that. And it's just sitting right on there. Now this is going to be very important in a bit. And if you do not have this and you're using a glue stick, you may want to, just as a safety standard, get some 2-inch wide painter's tape. And I'll show you that in a bit because we're going step by step with this. Now I'm going to walk you through what you need to do on the machine's console in order to set up this particular type of embroidery. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video when we were in the sewing room, you have to basically program it to full stop somewhere. And if you don't tell it to stop at that particular point, it's going to keep going. That's what the multi-needle machines are going to do. They're not going to know, oh, the next thread, you intend for that to be sewn through 2 layers, not 1. No. So you have to actually tell it. So that's what I'm going to walk you through so you can understand how that's done. Now, I'm going to be doing this with my Ricoma 1501. I don't know if your machine has the functionality or where it is, but most multi-needle machines are going to have that kind of functionality where you can say, please stop after this thread. So what you'll do is you'll put it on the actual thread color where when it's done stitching out, it will stop. You don't want to do it on the other one. It's meant to be tacked on to the end. I'm going to take my software dongle and I'm going to put that in the back. And we're going to go into File, USB. We're going to find our file here for the cat ears, and we're going to transfer it over to the machine. I'm just going to put it in the root folder. Organization is for the wicked. Then we select on the actual embroidery machine icon, find our cat ear file, and click okie dokie artichoke. So there you can see our file in there, and I've already pre-configured my Mighty Hoop for the machine. This is something that I'm not going to teach right now. There are plenty of tutorial videos on how to do this, but if you need to look it up specifically for Ricoma machines, then that I can leave a link in the description below. So we have everything set up here with the exception of the colors. So I'm going to go and I'm going to set up my colors. I'm going to want the first color to be, let's see, 7, which is going to be a lavender. And then our main color, I'm just going to do a black border because it'll be really subtle. You know, it won't jump out at you. So I've set up those colors, but the thing that I need to do is to make sure that after 7, I stop. Now on the Ricoma machines, you want to do this frame lift. So it's going to move the frame and it puts a F after the number. So what that says is after I'm done stitching that particular thread color, I'm going to stop and move the frame forward. It's really good for appliques. So we're going to use that particular functionality for putting the bottom half on to our design so that the back of the ears aren't showing stabilizer. So when you're done setting that up, we're going to click OK. And now we're going to start stitching. Okay, everything's good. We're gonna take this off of the machine and I'm gonna show you what you need to do now. All right, we're gonna gently remove this from the machine. And remember, it's just stopped and it's okay for you to remove this. It's not gonna hurt anything. About the only time I've had problems with that, and watch now it won't work, is when I've done hats. Now, you might be thinking, okay, why did you do a border on this? Well, the reason that I have a border trim around with a single stitch line is because you don't want to waste any more of the vinyl material than you have to. So what you can do is you can either cut away and reuse some of this portion here, or you can just cut the little bits that you need to go in this square, which is what I'm going to do. So we're going to lay this upside down onto the table, and I'm going to move this so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to grab my scissors. And then, which I'm just going to put these away because I'm not using them. Yay. And then I'm gonna grab more of my vinyl. I didn't tell you to pre-cut this, and the reason is because you have no idea where this was gonna go, so what was the point of doing that? You could have wasted more material. I'm just gonna lay this out and pretty much just kind of figure out about what I need. So we know we need to be about yay down here, and you wanna leave margins, by the way, so that you can cut around. So I'm just basically eyeballing this, and you can measure if you want. I'm just being super quick about it, and I need about yay amount. And I am actually pretty generous with when I go and I cut things. As you've noticed, I have all this extra stabilizer because I've had so many times where I've gotten so far in a design only to have it not have the correct amount or the right thing, so I just don't bother anymore. So the thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray base the absolute mess out of this fabric, and then I'm gonna lay it down right side up like this. And one of the things that you'll want to do is to grab masking tape or painter's tape and put it along the edges, because if it's moving a lot, if it's especially for a larger design, or if you're batch doing key fobs or batch doing these little cat ears, is sometimes the edge can get caught and then pull it, and then it's all like messed up. Aha! Okay, masking tape. Yes, go big or go home. I only have 2-inch masking tape. So spray based over my husband's camping gear because it shouldn't be in here. And then I'm going to lay this down, and from the center out and up and down, I'm gonna stick it down. And again, because I don't trust any of this to stay where it's supposed to, that's what the masking tape is for. If you want to pull a Hail Mary and give it a go, you are more than welcome to do so, but I will not do it. I can't tell you how many times I've had some key fobs get completely wrecked because of the bottom not staying like it's supposed to. And the thing is, you can't really unhoop these. If you unhoop it, you're gonna lose registration. It's not gonna go back and stitch the edge seams anywhere near where they were supposed to be. Unless you're really, really, really good at eyeballing it, I wouldn't do it. But now this is smooth, and when it's gliding over the arm of the embroidery machine, it's not gonna pull it up and basically wreck everything and make you feel like you need to drink an entire bottle of champagne that night because reasons. All right, now we've got that in there, we're gonna put it back on the machine and restart. Flipping the hoop back over, we're going to put it in exactly how we had it before. So making sure, especially orientation-wise, which was in the back and which was in the front. If you can't remember, you might want to mark it down, or you can double check on the screen, which I had moved and locked. You can double check on the screen to see where it was. So I'm going to slide this in. Now is also a good time to just double check your bobbin too. I did before I started this, so I know I'm good. And make sure there's nothing that could get pinched or cause a problem. And if it does cause a problem, you can cut it off. But we should be good. Famous last words. Okay, now what you can do is you can just hit start, and it'll continue where it was supposed to go next. All right, it's all done. Let's take it out and have a look. Okay, boop, pop it out. We're gonna look at it first without unhooping it. so we're gonna just look at it. The front is looking pretty darn good. About the only thing I wish is I had had the forethought to use the same thread color as the second one for the outer marking. So what I'm gonna do in the design, if you're looking at this post video, the design's gonna have 3 colors, and that's just because I'm setting that middle guideline placeholder design as a different color, so you can set it to the same but still have the stop in place. Now we're gonna flip it over, and look at that. That is all you need. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, where are the little lines down here that you have on the front? Because we have these front sections here, and that's what's gonna get flipped under and attached to the clip. But the reason that we don't have it on the back is so that you have a flap on either side and it will hold it stronger instead of maybe pitching forward when you've glued it on. Now I'm gonna unhoop this. Yeah. So professional. And of course, I've got all this tape on the back of it. Again, I don't have any regrets regarding the tape. I think the tape is fantastical. And actually what you can do is you can just kind of cut this away if you want. Bear in mind, you don't want to cut up to the edge of where the stitching is because you're going to want to use that. This is just going to help us free it. There we go. Okay, I wasn't too bad on that side. So we're going to take that hoop, I'm going to flip it, and then again, keeping hands free, we're going to put up our mighty hoop. So I'm going to put that up here. I'm just hanging it up above my husband's camping gear that should not be in my workshop. Not that I'm bitter. And now what you can do is you can cut around the edge to cut it out, but I don't want to do that down here, so let's go back upstairs and do that where I have a much better setup and maybe not a portable air conditioning unit making a ton of fan noises. Cool, so we're back in the room and now I have my work table. Let's go ahead and start cutting these things out. You're gonna need a lot of patience and some smaller scissors. I don't recommend using very large tailoring shears because you're gonna need to be able to cut into some pretty tight areas and make some pretty nice curves. So I'm going to use my 5-inch tailoring shears, the 726 by Femore. I'm going to flip over because I want to be able to cut from the top side of the embroidery. I don't want to do it from the bottom because if you remember, I left that little bit of a reference square or rectangle down here at the bottom, and that's the piece that's going to wrap around the hair clip. And so you don't want to accidentally from the back cut and then you're like, oh, whoops, I forgot to leave that there. Then you're going to have problems. So I'm just going to start cutting, and you want to leave, and it might be a little hard for you all to see this because it's such a shiny fabric, and I kind of wish I didn't listen to my kids on this one and went with a fabric that was a little easier to see on camera. And use contrasting threads, but you'll want to cut and leave maybe an 1/8 or even just as small as a 1/16 of an inch edge away from the stitching. You don't want to actually clip anywhere into the stitching because if you do that, then you know you're not going to have a sealed together design. It's basically going to end up cutting those threads and destabilizing everything. It'll fall apart, kind of like my 4th grade witch costume. I'm not bitter about that at all. I'm going to speed up the video for the rest of the cutting because no one needs to watch water boil.
Do da do ba do ba do da do ba do ba do ba do da ba do ba do do be do ba da ba ba da ba.
Cool, so we have both of these cut out now. What you're going to do is just double check everything is good in here, and you can, if you want, you can seam rip away this temporary stitching here and get rid of the stabilizer if you feel it might be too bulky, but it's totally fine to leave it. But both of these should be able to spread out this way so that you can have a little flap. So you see how it's going to basically wrap around like this. So the reason that we do this again is so that if you only did it from the front, and then they would pop back. So there's nothing to really anchor them. So that's why they're going to be anchored evenly and wrap around the hair clip. For the heat gun portion, I went ahead and I put down a Teflon sheet to protect my cutting board. I don't want my cutting board to get completely wrecked by this. Now I'm going to do a little bit along the top here. And you want to have you want to make sure that you're going to place the clips opposite of each other. Otherwise, you'll end up with one ear forward and one ear backwards. So do that first just to kind of get your bearings. You're going to want to put it on the front half because if you put it on the back, then you're not going to be able to open it up to put it on. Now the other thing is the ones that I purchased have these nice little grippy teeth, which are pretty darn important. So if I put this on, I may choose not to actually glue it on the underside, but I want to see how good that this is going to be, and maybe only glue it along the edge here and then cut to trim so I still have those grippy teeth. So if you run into that same problem, that's okay. I mean, there's no real science to any of this. So I'm going to put a layer of glue right here, and be generous with it, because anything you don't like or may overdo, it's okay, you can remove it later. And you're going to want that middle seam, that crack, to be right in the middle. So we're going to place that on top, and we're going to hold that down. Be as careful as you can not to get it on your fingers. So I'm just going to hold it in place so that it can glom on there. And it seems pretty good. We're going to leave it and let it do its thing. And these also, whee, are like sewing clips. They just want to flick away from you. These are not the most expensive clips that I've gotten in the past. So, like, yeah, anyway, they're not like the most awesome. So if you end up in the same boat as me, apologies. All right, so now I'm going to put glue down here. And you can use the tip to kind of melt off that little bit that had dangled forward. It'll melt again. And open wide and slam the crack right there. I swear, it just, you know, I just go with the flow when I say things in these videos. And hold it steady, but you don't want to like push down on the table because it'll bend it. It's got a slight curve to it. So try to hold it with your thumb. If you are encouraged to keep your fingerprints, you can also just grab a tool like this or your scissors or something to hold it down. That one seems to be in place. Now we're going to take this, I'm going to do a little wiggle test. I'm going to wiggle. See, it just popped right off of there. So that is why, and we're going to just open this up a tiny bit more. I'm going to put more glue in here. That's why I need to wrap it around. That's going to ensure that it stays where it should. So put that there and hold that in place. You see it's standing up very nicely. So it's not leaning back, it's not leaning forward, it's doing exactly what it needs to do. So we're gonna do this, get the glue all up in that mess. Yes, yes. I'm gonna take that out. See, it's just hard to hold this open for as long as we need. So now I'm going to squish to the inside. Oh my God, this is terrible. So we put the glue on the inside, and I let it dry just a tiny bit so it's not super, super warm to the touch. And I'm just gonna drop the little handle so the bottom half is gonna hold that there for a bit while that dries. So then we're gonna take the next one and we're gonna hold it open. And you can do, if you want, you can do this with like super glue instead. It's just since it has the, depending, well, with these smaller clips, I have a higher chance of it touching my hands. I don't want to do that. This stuff will just kind of pull off. So that's why I don't worry about it as much. But if you go ahead and you just be really generous with it, you can put a little bit in at the front and a little bit in on the back. And then close this up and let it kind of just set, because then the one side will be set. See, I left my mistakes in with this one because one, it's funny, but two, you can see how now I'm kind of learning from it and working around. I never said I was an expert in these things. I just like to broadcast my stupidity to the world. Okay. And all of that extra glue, once it's kind of dried, you can just peel it right off of there. All right, now, jaws of life this thing. It's kind of odd. I'm sure there's a better way of opening this up, and this is partially on me for going, oh, I want small clips. I don't want big clips. I just want to get the little guys. They're so cute. Yes. Anyway, push it in with your fingernails. If you don't have fingernails, then you can use something else. You could use a nail file, a toothpick, or whatever, and then have it hold it down like that. Just holding it down in place, because it's naturally going to clip and hold all of that where it's supposed to be. And then for this one is fairly dry. So on the underside, you see I have all that glue that kind of got stuck up under. I'm just going to take my fingernail and scrape at it to peel it off of there, so it won't be on the final product. Another thing I could have done is potentially wrap that so I don't have to deal with it too. But you can take this and just fix it. I also have a stiletto, and very carefully, because you don't want it, like, I know to the camera it might look like I'm stabbing toward my fingers. I am not. My thumb is actually like more back this way. That can help kind of lift one of the edges, and then you can kind of scrape off that way. So that's one way of doing it. Now this one's going to be dry, and this one I did a much better job of not getting glue all over. Now the file that you download, if you choose to download and do this project on your own, I did make these flaps a little longer, so you won't have to worry about it, but I just wanted to put that out there. It's also a good thing that these are so strong, because if it didn't have the teeth to grip hair, then, and this was really loose, then it would be kind of moot. So I'll make sure there is going to be a link to all of the materials. There we go. Okay, so all of that extra little glue is off of there. So now you're probably like, well, that looks pretty messy. And I mean, if I'm giving this to my kids to just mess around, I don't really care so much. But if you're trying to take these and sell them at a fair, like as a pair, then you'll probably want to cover this portion up. Even if, say, you grab my new file and use that. So what I'm going to do to cover that up is just put a little bit of ribbon in there and hold it down, and it will cover that seam. I just have a little bit of 1/4 inch ribbon that I'm going to use. I carefully cut that down. And because ribbon is one of those materials that can actually fray at the ends, I'm going to just hit it really briefly with a touch of the lighter here. I swear my brain is attached to my mouth. And I'm going to measure this out and see about what we need. There we go. And I'll just touch that very briefly. Boop. Just like that. You don't really need to like linger. It'll start charring the ends. I did char the end of that one, so I'm going to put this in the back because nobody will ever notice it. Ha 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 ha. All right, we're going to put some glue in there. You don't need a whole lot. And that little bit of a bubble of glue that got in there. And I clean this up a smidge. I'm going to just stick this in here toward the back and cover up that gnarly looking seam, which again, you guys won't have to worry about that, but if you do want to cut it short, then that works too. Now I just went ahead and I left that hanging off of the end over here, so I'm going to cut that off now like that. And then hit it very gently with the flame. Ba-da, ba-da, just like that. So there, okay, I'll repeat the same over here. And then we're gonna talk about what you can do about cleaning up the edge. Edge coat is completely optional. This is something that you can use on leather and faux leather to finish the edges. Now for me, I used white stabilizer and a dark vinyl, and so it kind of looks like a really thin diet Oreo cookie in here. I'm not too happy about that. I don't, especially if I'm gonna take this and sell it somewhere, I wanna make sure that it looks good, that all of this is kind of sealed up. It's easier to do that before you put them on, but of course this is something I decided to do afterward. This is optional. You don't have to do it. Also, like with the ribbons and stuff, you know, getting this kind of nailed down and making it look nice is very important, but definitely edge coat's the way to go. And of course I would use black edge coat. And the way that you want to do this is to just take a bit of the edge coat that I apparently have not used yet. I thought I had, and actually I've used the white. You're going to take the edge coat tool and dip it in, and the grooves are going to catch all of that, and then you're just going to roll along the edge just like that. And you can do this as many times as you feel is necessary. But I usually go over it 2 times if I'm going to edge coat. I do this with the key fobs. It's the same kind of technique that you would do if you were making embroidered key fobs. We'll just stand that up there and we'll let it dry. And just go over it. Ba-dum, ba-dum. And the more you go over it, the more it'll get that nice raised look. If you go look at a ready-made bag at any kind of department store and you see that they have this vinyl looking edging on all of their bags, any of the exposed seams, that's the edge coat. That's what that is. And this has made it possible for your home bag makers to start making their bags look a touch more professional when they have things with raw edges. I'm not a huge fan of raw edges on vinyl, only because it just doesn't look good. It really doesn't. All right. See, that's really nice. And if you build up and build up and build up, it'll dry nice and glossy and give it a very professional look. Well, that's it. Ta-da! I'm wearing them. And I get to enjoy them for maybe 5 minutes before my children come and steal them away from me. Wow. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you want the file, again, all the information is down in the description below. Please leave me feedback so that I know if there are better ways of doing things, and I can do a follow-up video later, especially if you don't want to burn off your fingertips. Anyway, thank you. Bye.